In the long history of firearms, few innovations change the battlefield and hunting fields as dramatically as the repeating rifle. Before repeating rifles were introduced, most soldiers and shooters relied on single-shot weapons. After every shot, the shooter had to manually reload powder, insert a bullet, and prepare the weapon again. This process took time, required focus, and in combat situations it could mean the difference between survival and defeat. But everything began to change when engineers and inventors started experimenting with firearms that could fire multiple shots before needing to reload. One of the first successful repeating rifles marked a turning point in military technology and firearm design. To understand the importance of early repeating rifles, it helps to imagine the battlefield in the early 19th century. Most soldiers used muzzle-loading muskets. These weapons required several steps to reload: pouring gunpowder into the barrel, placing the bullet, packing it down with a ramrod, and preparing the firing mechanism. Even well-trained soldiers could only fire about 2 to 3 shots per minute. In the chaos of battle, that slow firing rate limited how effective a soldier could be. Inventors began searching for ways to solve this problem. The idea of a repeating firearm was simple but revolutionary: create a weapon that could hold several rounds of ammunition and allow the shooter to fire multiple times without reloading after each shot. However, turning that idea into a reliable mechanical system was extremely difficult. Early attempts were often complex, fragile, or too expensive to produce. One of the key breakthroughs came with the development of early lever-action repeating rifles. These rifles used a lever mechanism located beneath the trigger guard. When the shooter pulled the lever down and then back up, the rifle would eject the spent cartridge, load a fresh round from a magazine, and cock the firing mechanism. This single motion allowed the shooter to prepare the next shot quickly and efficiently. The introduction of a magazine system was another crucial innovation. Instead of carrying individual rounds that had to be loaded one by one into the barrel, repeating rifles stored multiple cartridges in a tube or magazine attached to the firearm. Each time the shooter operated the lever, bolt, or pump mechanism, a new cartridge would automatically move into the firing chamber. This allowed the shooter to fire several shots in rapid succession. Early repeating rifles dramatically increased the rate of fire compared to traditional single-shot firearms. In some cases, a trained shooter could fire 10 or more rounds in the time it took another soldier to fire only 2 or 3 shots with a muzzle loader. This advantage was especially important in situations where speed and sustained firepower mattered most. However, the journey toward a reliable repeating rifle was not easy. Many early designs suffered from mechanical problems. Some were too complicated to manufacture, while others struggled with issues like weak cartridges or unreliable feeding systems. Engineers had to carefully balance durability, simplicity, and cost. Another challenge involved ammunition technology. Early firearms used loose powder and separate bullets, which made repeating mechanisms difficult to design. The invention of self-contained metallic cartridges helped solve this problem. These cartridges combined the bullet, powder, and primer into a single unit. This design made it much easier for repeating rifles to load and fire ammunition reliably. As repeating rifles improved, they began to attract attention from both military forces and civilian shooters. Hunters appreciated the ability to take multiple shots quickly when tracking game. Soldiers recognized the tactical advantage of having a weapon that could fire repeatedly without constant reloading. In many ways, repeating rifles represented a major leap forward in firepower and efficiency. Despite their advantages, early repeating rifles were not immediately adopted everywhere. Some military leaders were skeptical. They worried that soldiers equipped with repeating rifles might waste ammunition by firing too quickly. Others were concerned about the cost of producing these more complex firearms compared to traditional muskets. But as technology continued to improve, the benefits became impossible to ignore. Repeating rifles demonstrated that higher rates of fire could provide a significant advantage in both combat and hunting situations. Over time, armies began to recognize the potential of these weapons and gradually incorporated them into their arsenals. The success of early repeating rifles also inspired further innovation in firearm design. Engineers experimented with different mechanisms, including bolt-action systems, pump-action rifles, and eventually semi-automatic firearms. Each new development built upon the lessons learned from the earliest repeating rifle designs. What made the first successful repeating rifles so important was not just their mechanical design, but the way they changed how people thought about firearms. Instead of viewing a gun as a single-shot tool, inventors began thinking in terms of sustained firepower and efficiency. This shift in thinking opened the door to the modern firearms we see today. Another important aspect of early repeating rifles was their influence on manufacturing techniques. Producing these weapons required precise engineering and standardized parts. As firearm companies refined their manufacturing processes, they helped drive advances in industrial production methods that would later be used in many other industries. From a historical perspective, the introduction of repeating rifles marked a transitional moment between older black powder firearms and the more advanced weapons that would appear in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These early repeaters bridged the gap between simple muskets and modern rifles capable of rapid, reliable fire. Collectors and historians today still study these early repeating rifles because they represent such an important stage in technological development. Many surviving examples are carefully preserved in museums and private collections. They serve as reminders of the ingenuity and determination of the inventors who pushed firearm technology forward. The design principles behind early repeating rifles also influenced civilian firearm culture. Lever-action rifles in particular became iconic tools for hunters, explorers, and settlers in many parts of the world. Their reliability, speed, and mechanical simplicity made them popular for decades. Even today, the concept of a repeating firearm remains fundamental to modern weapon systems. Whether it is a bolt-action sniper rifle, a pump-action shotgun, or a semi-automatic rifle, the basic idea of firing multiple rounds without reloading after each shot continues to shape firearm design. Looking back, it is clear that one of the first successful repeating rifles did more than simply increase the number of shots a shooter could fire. It represented a breakthrough in engineering, a shift in military tactics, and the beginning of a new era in firearm technology. The inventors behind these early repeating rifles faced countless challenges, from mechanical reliability to ammunition compatibility. Yet their persistence and creativity led to a design that proved the concept of repeating firearms could work effectively in real-world conditions. As a result, the repeating rifle stands as one of the most important milestones in the history of firearms. It transformed the way weapons were built, used, and understood. From the battlefields of the 19th century to the hunting grounds and shooting ranges of today, the influence of those early repeating rifles can still be seen. In the end, the story of one of the first successful repeating rifles is not just about a weapon. It is a story about innovation, problem-solving, and the relentless pursuit of better technology. It shows how a single breakthrough idea can reshape an entire field and leave a lasting impact on